Welcome back to Second Breakfast and our ongoing Summerween series, celebrating hot weather and horror movies by bringing you the best thoughts, theories, and literary analysis this side of Camp Crystal Lake.
I love when we do a classic. It's so much fun. It's a little intimidating, but it's always very exciting.
Yes, it is. And somehow we've never talked about the original Friday the 13th, but we got to see it in theaters on a Friday the 13th, probably a couple weeks ago. By the point that you're hearing this, we saw it was like 10:30 at night.
Which is like late for us. We are old.
We've been doing this show 5 years. We are now both in our 30s. Any movie, even a short horror movie, starting at 10:30 at night.
Diabolical.
I was so excited when I booked the tickets. Like, yeah, it's going to be on Friday the 13th. It's going to be so much fun. And as it got closer, I was hearing like the Jaws music.
And I was like,
head.
oh no. I was like, it's still an hour before we have to leave the house. It was horrible. And then I ended up having to go to work the next day, which was like not planned and not fun. Anyway, but I'm still so glad that we saw this movie in theaters. It was a delightful experience.
Because we've seen it before.
Right.
We watched it at home. We blew through. I think we watched the first 4 and the reboot. We didn't make it all the way.
No, we didn't.
But this one was so much fun to watch in a theater. The crowd was totally into it.
Yeah, they applauded at the end. It was great.
And we weren't going to do an episode on it. We just had a good experience. But you said something really interesting on the way home. And it just kind of stuck in my mind. And eventually, here come the notes. And now we're here for an episode. And the thing you said, I'm distilling it a little bit. Feel free to jump in. You basically said that we take the first Friday the 13th for granted.
Yeah, I think we do. I mean, the whole franchise is sort of what the franchise became it went beyond this first Friday the 13th, I think, mostly because, I mean, big spoilers for Friday the 13th, but it's a 40-year-old movie, 45 years old, but Jason is not even in the first movie. The villain is his mother, and hockey mask Jason doesn't appear until the third movie. And so when we think about Friday the 13th, we're thinking of Jason in the hockey mask with the big machete. Like, that's what we all think of, which is great and iconic and like a wonderful horror villain that, you know, has gone through this franchise over decades. That's so cool. But we don't really think about the first one as being like so important, because I think, especially also when we think about this franchise as a whole, we think about the sequels, which, as you just laid out, are kind of like, they're not great. They're pretty trashy. They're pretty much like rinse and repeat, same plot over and over again, and it gets kind of dull. But this first one does it all really, really well. I kind of think, maybe this is a really strong argument, I think it's like the perfect slasher.
No, I totally agree. I think it sets the blueprint for a lot of those things. The two things I wanted to talk about in this discussion, and you can pick which one we do first.
Okay.
I want to talk about creature design, and I have a larger point about cliches.
Okay. Why don't we start with the creature design, just to kind of get that out of the way.
So yeah, like you said, Jason, we never see him in the mask, but at the very end you see the freaky, resurrected, weird little boy version of him.
Creeping out of the water. Yeah, you do get that.
But you have in your mind this masked killer. I mean, especially now, like you said, 45 years later, you're picturing that even when it's not on screen. But in the absence of traditional creature design, all you're left with throughout this slasher is the weapons and the bodies.
Right.
It reminds me of those, you remember those shots in the first Halloween that are almost POV shots?
I was thinking a lot about the POV thing. Yeah, when it's like young Michael, when he, first kills his family.
Or even when he's watching Laurie at the school. And you get these shots kind of over his shoulder. There are a lot of really interesting POV shots where you're aware that he's there, but you don't have any details about how to picture him. This movie is all about seeing the bodies, seeing the guy pinned to the wall with the big knife,
right,
like you get in the first Halloween.
Yeah, true.
It's weapons and bodies, and we just got to see Jaws in a theater a month ago at this point. And it reminded me of that too, because it was so much about the power of suggestion.
Totally. And you get some POV stuff in Jaws too, especially at the beginning, like going through the water, you're like in the POV of the shark, kind of like swimming through the ocean. And so I was watching like I did the tiniest bit of baby research to prep for this episode.
Baby research?
I was researching babies, as one does. No,
what are babies?
What is a
Wikipedia,
baby?
Please.
I feel like that's a line from like Lady and the Tramp. Like when
they didn't have Wikipedia.
No, they didn't. It's true. This was the early 20th century. We're getting
so
off
in the
track.
absence of
wait. I'm sorry. My point was I did a tiny bit of research. Where was I? I don't even know. But mostly just talking about how the
Jaws.
I think we often think of, at least if you're like sort of like you're a film enthusiast, but you're not a real like film scholar. You don't like know a ton about movies, which is kind of where I sit. I know about movies. Like I don't think I'm a normie, but I'm not like a crazy like cinema nerd. Like if I went into the Criterion Collection truck, I'd be like, I've never heard of any of these movies. I like Jaws, you know what I mean? So apparently like this like sort of POV thing was very common in like 1960s horror, which is not something we know very well apart from like Psycho and Rosemary's Baby. Like I think that's about all we've seen. I think we often think about Friday the 13th as, oh, it's like the first slasher, or like Halloween was the first slasher, and it's really not true. Apparently,
Black Christmas,
right? And like, but like we say that about these like 70s and 80s movies, but it really starts in like the 50s and 60s. But things like Friday the 13th and Halloween carried into I think the larger public sphere and have like transcended for decades and decades, and have sort of lasted much longer than some of those earlier iterations.
Yeah, I mean, that's been the journey of this podcast, this show, over the last 5 years, especially as we've gotten more and more into horror. It's tapping into that lineage where everything is building on other things. Mm-hmm. Everything is tapping into these major influences. And when you talk about any kind of pioneering film, like this one is, I mean, that's why there's a whole section we're going to do on cliches.
Right.
Because it becomes so baked in, it becomes such a formula within the genre that we almost, what's the word where you become kind of blind to the things right in front of you.
Sure, yeah.
You're too used to them,
Forest
so you
for the
don't
trees.
notice them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Your eyes just pass over them. There's no sticking point anymore.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of that here.
Okay.
And in terms of creature design, we don't have the slasher icon yet. We plant the seeds that eventually, like you said, I mean, how miraculous is it that they take 3 movies to develop this icon?
I know.
But it still feels special the whole time. So you don't have Jason yet. You don't have the hockey mask. You don't have the machete and his whole look yet. So you have his mom. Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about Pamela Voorhees in terms of creature design, because the design of the clothing and the hair and her whole look and the actress's presentation, that is creature design. She is the creature. She is the monster of this movie. And I found her so powerful.
Yeah.
And you're talking about influences and lineage. This time, she reminded me so much of how blown away I was the first time I saw The Strangers. I think it's the same kind of magic trick that's being utilized here. Because for this cast, it's a bunch of teenagers. They're dumb, they're young, they're silly, they're very goofy in a very relatable way. I didn't think it was a parody or a commentary. They just felt like actual teenagers.
Sure, yeah.
But for them, even for the world-weary final girl, by the time she's jumping at every noise and person, this like suburban sweatered mom is the ultimate corruption of home.
Yeah.
Because by the time she slides into the movie in the third act, they take a while to become even mildly suspicious of her.
Yeah, because of course.
Yes.
Like you wouldn't like you see this like this innocent looking middle-aged woman. I wouldn't be like, oh, that's the person who's stalking and killing us.
But she's weird from the jump,
Yeah.
and they don't question that for a while.
No, right? Because they're blinded by how normal she appears.
That's how much she flies under the radar. And then once you do get into that final battle, basically that struggle, I was so impressed with the fight. Because when you just look at this sweatered mom that you're throwing into a slasher, you wouldn't think she could throw down.
Right. She's not like trained in combat.
But neither is our final girl.
Of course
I think
not.
Alice is her name.
I couldn't tell you. In these movies, their names don't matter.
So neither of them could fight on that level.
Yeah.
But they were kind of evenly matched. In the type of scrabbling, desperate, choking, stabbing fighting, they're a real threat to each other.
Yeah.
And I love that in the absence of the traditional slasher villain, the stakes aren't that high. You know what I mean? Like there is no combatant in this film.
It's not like a supernatural power. And at first you think
she's a brutal threat to the teenagers.
Yes.
In the same way any anonymous masked killer would be.
Yeah, and it's interesting because at first you would think, oh, well, if she's this like kind of normal and awkward in this encounter with Alice at the end, I'm just assuming that's her name, how was she able to seemingly easily kill all the other kids earlier in the movie? But what she has going for her is the element of surprise. she's like attacking people like, you know, through stealth. She's like coming out of nowhere and all of a sudden attacking them and like surprising them, versus when she's fighting Alice here at the end. Alice has seen her and like it's a much different kind of fight and struggle. So of course she's not going to kill Alice quite as easily as she killed all the others, you know?
Yeah, totally. I loved how she's got this almost suburban camouflage on. You're right. That's how she could, the first girl that we see get in this car.
Yeah.
And I love the way that was shot because you never see who's driving that Jeep.
Yeah, it's
and then
perfect.
at the end, you see the Jeep drive up to Camp Crystal Lake. That was such a beautiful, kind of quiet, crafty reveal.
Yeah, right.
But I just loved the fact that she was that formidable in that final fight. She wasn't competing with, I mean, every time they cast, when they remake these classic slashers, they always find a guy who's 1 million pounds and 50 feet tall
Yeah.
and built like a brick shit house. There was none of that here.
Right.
Like, she wasn't competing with anything. She was competing with dumb teenagers. So this mom became a terrifying killer.
Yes, right, exactly.
I loved that. It was almost like how when you have a superhero movie that is just about two people fighting instead of the whole city being destroyed in the third act, I feel like this was quite grounded. And for any movie in the 1980s, for the big bad to be a middle-aged woman, for the movie to hinge on a middle-aged woman, I mean, that would be like such a striking strive forward in equality for any other genre.
Yeah.
But like you said about the lineage of horror, that's just another day in the park.
Absolutely.
For horror,
Absolutely.
it's always had that level of representation and the foregrounding of women throughout the genre. I was impressed by that.
Yeah, I did really like that. And she's just so unsettling, I think, because she is so normal. Like, obviously, if you saw, like, you know, once what Jason becomes later in the franchise, if you saw that out in the wild, that would scare the shit out of you. But it is so out of reality. It is so supernatural. And there is a supernatural element in this movie, certainly, where Jason is sort of channeling himself through his mother from the dead. And he of course, pops out of the lake at the end. But if you take that small part of it out, it's just a woman who's like pissed that her son died. And so she's just a normal lady. And that's really, really scary, that somebody who's supposed to represent safety and comfort and nurturing and, you know, home. You're right. It's the ultimate corruption of home. That's so scary that would be who your murderer is.
I think horror is at its best when it is low tech. And I don't really mean that on a technical level. I mean that when it relies on the power of a great script. Like when she does the little Jason voice to herself and has this kind of two-way conversation with her different voices, it's really scary.
It is, yeah.
And that's just in the script. That has nothing to do with budget. Like we've been watching a lot of horror movies, obviously, for the series, and we just watched the It movies back to back. And those are great, and they have incredible, huge budgets, and they set crazy records for the genre. And the sound design is so interesting.
Yeah.
When Pennywise turns quickly to see someone walk in the room, and you get that,
Yeah.
and you know there's a ton of money behind that. And that amps up the fear. That makes that scare more effective in the moment.
Yeah,
and I
of course.
loved that the most troubling parts of this movie were just like a mom doing a weird little voice.
Sure. Or like just like looking at a shower curtain. You
Again,
know?
like
simple.
The Strangers is scary because there's a knock at the door.
Right.
Because the killers don't have a motivation. Those things are all simple and on the page. They get at that elemental power of this genre.
Totally. And there is like, it's such a bold and daring choice, because I think Mrs. Voorhees could have been just funny. Like, it could have been very funny to watch a middle-aged, you know, sweater wearing woman attacking teenagers. Like, it could have looked really funny and goofy. And there certainly is comedy in this movie. That's the joy of a slasher, is that there is an element of comedy, but this one also balances it really well with the actual terror of her. So she manages to be kind of like, it's sort of like when you realize it's her, it's sort of funny, because you're like, what? I thought it was going to be this big, you know, masked scary guy, and oh, it's this lady. That's weird. But then a second later, you're like, oh no, she's terrifying. And I think that's really impressive that they were able to manage that. And you're right. I think a big part of that is through the script, and also just through the actress's performance.
Just a signpost as we keep it moving here.
Yeah.
We have done episodes on both Jaws and The Strangers, so you can go check those out. I'll tag those in the YouTube version.
Do please.
And if you want even more bonus episodes from us, you can check out the Patreon. $2 a month. You can get 2 new episodes from us every month and access to the entire back catalog.
Great plugs.
Before we move on to the cliches, I just have to take like 30 seconds to talk about Shakespeare because there's a little of that in here.
Okay.
The freaky old man with the floppy hat.
Yes. The town crazy guy, right?
Yes, the one who charges in like a bat out of hell multiple times. Like, there's a death curse.
Yeah, you're all gonna die.
That guy. That's from Julius Caesar.
Okay, yeah.
The Ides of March, the soothsayer. That's straight Shakespeare. That's a cliche from the 1500s. It's so good. The old fella warning of the death curse. It's genuinely Shakespearean, and it still works. Like all of the best stuff from that era.
That's great.
And I think I want to look at this as a classic in the same way we talk about tropes that were pioneered during Shakespeare's time and the Elizabethan theater, that we still rely on so many of those planks of storytelling. I want to look at how Friday the 13th has become an archetype in its own right.
I think that sounds great. Yeah, because I think part of my thinking about us taking this movie for granted is it's full of all these cliches, but it's before they really became cliches or before we became tired of them. Like, I think at this point in history, you shouldn't call them cliches. They're more just like essential elements of the genre.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, it's good. You've got a bunch of teens. You've got a cabin in the woods. You've got a killer with a mask, a killer with a mask on. You've got a big stupid machete with a handle. Those are, like you said, those are all incredibly tired tropes now. They have become cliches. 3 points here. 1, that doesn't mean that they're easy to execute on screen.
Right.
How many slashers have you and I seen in the last 5 years? I mean, you flip a coin when you go to a horror movie. Either it's bad and hopefully it's good bad.
Right.
Or it's really good, you know? Like,
yeah.
But we've seen a lot of duds.
Yeah.
Who almost take these cliches for granted as, oh, of course anyone could do that. And then they totally bomb with it. Point 2, this is the film that pioneered that template and created those cliches. And 3, as a classic work of horror, I think, like you said at the beginning here, this film is still bulletproof.
Yeah. Yeah, it's still effective. It's still scary. It's still funny. It's still relatable, even though, of course, I wasn't alive in 1980. I don't know what it was like to be a teenager then. The teenagers feel so real and true to how teenagers have always been and always will be.
You're talking a lot about tone, I've noticed, in the way you're describing the things you like about the film. It's got a kind of tricky tone to describe and nail down, because there are moments that are genuinely funny and silly and almost, I don't know, almost of a teen comedy from this decade.
Yeah.
Like them trying to kill the snake. Which, again, could have been played for horror, could have been a misdirection, jump scare thing, and it isn't.
No,
the whole scene is silly.
It is a little silly, but it also feels a little bit ominous, right? It's a bit of it's an omen kind of moment, but it is funny. And so then when they try to fight a real big bad, which is, of course, Mrs. Voorhees, this person killing them, it's much, much harder and much, much scarier, you know?
And a lot of the other scenes, especially the establishing shots, every time you cut back to a location, you get a quick shot of that, whether it's the sign saying Camp Crystal Lake, or it's the outside of a cabin, or you see those so many times. Again, you can kind of go blind to them. But the atmosphere and mood in this film is not to be overlooked. It's so well done, and it never feels hokey, despite kind of the silliness of the cabins and the decoration. The music, those excellent cues.
Yeah, those are great.
The music was so, I mean, the movie was way too loud in the theater we saw it.
It was a bit much.
The music was so effective. Overall, all of these things that support the script, that support the actors' performances, it was so charming and sincere. There was a real sense of style. And I feel like, again, we look at this, we just kind of flatten the whole aesthetic as teens in the woods. It's easy and dumb and you don't take it seriously. But I think this film does. I think that's why it works.
I think it's perfecting all these things. I think this is like the best that a slasher really can be. Like it's got the comedy, and I think part of what the comedy also serves, apart from being just straight entertaining, is it's the contrast, right? It's the teens are being goofy and funny, and it contrasts so drastically with the grimness of what's happening. Like, I think about when they're all swimming in the lake earlier in the film, and one of the guys pretends to be drowning, and so they're all freaking out. They dive in to try to save him, and then he's just, pretending to have drowned so that he can do mouth to mouth with the girl he likes, which is like such a teenage boy thing to do. And they're all like, they're so like, so it's this moment of comedy, which helps you understand the characters and like is funny to you as the audience, but it also is sort of like because we've already seen bad things happening. We know bad things are happening. The teens don't. And so it's sort of like, oh, they're so naive and dumb and they're just goofing around and they have no idea how bad things are about to get, but we do. And so we kind of feel bad for them, but also don't, because you feel smarter than they are. And I think that's what when a slasher is really good, is when you simultaneously are connecting with the characters and putting yourself in their shoes, but you're also kind of feeling like you're smarter than them, or you could get out of the situation a bit better than them. I think that's what's really, really fun compared to like a much more grounded horror film where you are just like in it with the characters and it's like devastating. And that's a different kind of movie. This, I think, balances the I'm laughing at them, but I'm also afraid with them at the same time.
I think it's more, I use rewatchability as more of a metric for slashers than I do for other types of horror. Because they feel, I mean, they are formulaic a little bit, and they're fun. They're fun to rewatch with people. There is a basic template of they start to die and then they die faster and faster.
Yeah.
And I think when I rewatch a slasher, it falls apart, and I think less of the film if I start to resent the downtime in between the kills. And I never felt that way on this subsequent viewing of this film. I thought they used the downtime really well.
Yeah, it's always entertaining and it's always building tension. Like even when they're playing like strip Monopoly in the cabin, all those cutaway scenes, like again, it contrasts with, because it's intercutting between them and like the other characters who are getting killed in different parts of the camp. So that contrast is like, it sort of heightens all the emotions. But it's also like you're so stressed because they have no idea. They're innocently playing this silly game and like having fun, and they have no idea that their friends are getting killed next door. And so it makes you like nervous about when are they going to be attacked, how vulnerable are they going to be, because they're playing strip Monopoly, you know, like what situation are they going to be in. And also it is funny to watch, you know, teens playing this game,
but it charms you. It makes you care about them. I feel like I'm not meaning to just compare this to modern things I don't like, and that's why I'm not using specifics, but I feel like a lot of modern slashers, if it's not an active kill scene, it's someone exposition dumping their trauma backstory on another character.
A little bit,
and that's like this shortcut to why we're supposed to be invested in this character.
Right.
And I so loved the way that this film handled downtime and did its world building, because it felt patient, like an older film. It moved slowly, and there was genuine drama drawn up by genuine characters. The scene between the counselor, Steve, or whatever his name is, the boss guy, but the scene between him and the waitress at the diner, or the scene of the final girl picking up the guitar and just strumming for a minute. The scene of a girl making instant coffee. The scene of Kevin Bacon's girlfriend peeing afterwards. The hitchhiking. It was all like, they were so patiently filmed.
It was so normal.
They were slow, they were normal, they were kind, they were charming.
But I wasn't like bored. Like they were doing normal things. So like I wasn't bored because I was stressed for them.
I was interested.
Right.
I was just enjoying what I was watching, and it didn't feel like they were cheating. It didn't feel like they were trying to get me really invested in them, because they felt like real people just milling around and living.
I was naturally becoming invested in them as people versus them like telling me why I should be invested. I mean, I don't mind when a story is really, really character focused and like goes into their backstory and stuff, but that doesn't really belong here. And I think there's a lot of like, I don't know, I feel like a lot of contemporary movies really feel like they have to do that, and they really have to dive in and like give us the whole backstory, and like we don't have to get the lore always.
Yeah, I mean, no one loves a Flanagan monologue more than you and me.
Of course.
We love all the tragic backstory stuff.
Right.
But I admired how the formula seemed to originate here.
Yeah.
With that more everyday, almost documentary-like downtime.
And I think it's just more true to life. Like these kids who are coming to come work at this camp, they're not going to get there the first night and all dump their trauma backstories, especially not in 1980. No one's talking about that, you know?
That's interesting.
They're going to hang out and have fun and flirt with each other. Like that's what they're going to do. And maybe talk a bit about where they're from, or, you know, some of them seem to know each other already, so they don't have to have the exposition scene. Like they wouldn't do that. They're just there to have fun. And that's what they do.
But for as slow and calm as a lot of those downtime scenes were, I was so impressed by the momentum the film gathered once they started to be killed off.
Right.
It felt, I mean, it's those dominoes that fall through a slasher. Do you have one kill every 10 minutes so no one falls asleep? Or do you have like 30 kills in the last act? And I loved the way the dominoes were set up in this film. It felt like the kills almost snuck up on me as a viewer, and as someone pretty well versed in this genre, where the tension ratcheted up quicker than I expected. They almost killed the teenagers out of order of what I'd come to expect. There was plenty of kind of kill your darlings, and some of it is that we know Kevin Bacon now, so if you see him in a movie, you're like, oh, he's the lead. He's going to be in more of this.
Right, and then he's like one of the first to die.
He's in like 4 scenes. And he's very good.
He is.
But it was funny to have him killed off early. That felt like almost a thesis statement in retrospective of no one is sacred.
No, right, yeah. And I kind of like that. I mean, not to be shady, but the final girl actress is giving a difficult performance, I'll say. It's not it, right? But I like that because I think that's also a hallmark of this genre.
Oh, yeah.
It's like most of the acting is not good, or it's not trying to be good.
And that's usually fine. That usually has very little impact on the quality of the film.
It doesn't matter. Exactly. Yeah. Like there's enough going on in the script and like on screen that you're invested in the people, but you're not, again, it's not a character study. And so like it's fine that they're overacting when they're screaming or yelling or crying, you know, or they're being overly stupid. Like it's fine.
The shot of Kevin Bacon's girlfriend, I'm sorry, I don't remember. I think Marcy is the name. I don't know.
Listen,
I did some Googling before. The lady wearing pink.
Yeah.
Who's dating Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
When she's killed in the bathroom.
With the axe.
I mean, she's doing a fine job.
Yeah, she's fine.
But that last shot before the axe hits
she's just
her,
standing there like,
I put it in the YouTube in the rotating thumbnails that we have, all the pictures I pull from things in the video version. I had to put that image in there because it is the funniest moment in the film, because she goes from looking terrified to this like flat angle looking straight at her, and she's just kind of hanging her head to the side like,
and just like accepting her fate, not trying to run, not trying to like, she's not even holding up her arms, she's just standing there with her head kind of sideways.
It's very silly,
like, oh man, you know.
But it's kind of okay, because it's not about how well the teenagers are acted. That's really not what matters with the character.
No, it's not.
The thing I was impressed with about these teenage characters in the woods was that they were very vulnerable without being stupid.
Yeah.
Once the dominoes started to fall, once they were being picked off one by one, and it moved pretty quick.
Yeah.
Once the guy in the rain jacket, they're all going down. But when one of them would, tiptoe through the rain and hear a noise in the distance, they would do what pretty much you would do. They assumed the noise was one of their friends.
Of course.
Because they haven't seen anyone else out there. None of the campers are there yet.
Your brain doesn't jump to, it must be a murderer, you know?
But what they did was they saw that it was raining heavily. They heard a noise and they offered help.
Yeah.
They investigated the sound, but assumed it was one of their friends. They tried to rescue people. Like, these characters weren't naively wholesome in that kind of cringy way, but they were good people.
I know, and even the closest the closest thing to someone being that stupid is the hitchhiker. But I have to remember, in 1980, it was pretty normal to hitchhike like that. And she is a little overly optimistic and grinny and like, oh, why would I quit? Why would I leave? I'm so excited for my summer job. But like, I think she's just naive in the way that every 19-year-old is naive. Like, she's not overly stupid, but she's also not like, she's not like super gritty and down to earth and I know exactly, like she's not like that either. She's just being kind of normal,
She is trying to believe the best of people.
Yeah,
right. Like, there was a goodness to these people that I found interesting and kind of refreshing, because I think something that has happened to this genre in the intervening 45 years is that tonal shift, that cynicism. And my big takeaway from watching Friday the 13th again now is that there's nothing snide or superior about this film at all. It's earnestly done. It's masterfully crafted. It's not looked down upon. We don't take it seriously because it's just horror. It's a passionate, sinister film.
Yeah.
It's short, but it's really effective. It's clean. And it kind of sets, like we're talking about this blueprint for the genre, it sets all of the immortal ground rules that we still follow. Only the killer matters. There is no other continuity. There is no plot armor. It's just about Jason. I mean, the freaky mom even gets killed off. The final girl, the implication of the end of the first one is that she's killed off by the kid in the boat. Like,
yeah, right.
I know she's in the first minute of the second movie, but all of those rules that we talk about nowadays, that we talk about in Final Destination, that we talk about in Saw, any of these other endlessly sequeled horror classics, we can trace so many of them back to this film. I really think we should talk about it with the same respect and reverence that we do the first Halloween.
I agree. I mean, because like I think we often talk about Halloween more because I just said it like you. I don't say Halloween. I say Halloween. Anyway, we talk about Halloween. We talk about it like because it came first. It's a few years prior to Friday the 13th, and so therefore, like if we just like look at things in a linear way, like that's like the forebearer. But like I said earlier, plenty of other movies came before this in the 1960s and 50s that were doing a lot of this and kind of laying the groundwork, right? But I think that Friday the 13th it's not copying what Halloween did. It's very much doing its own thing. I think both of those films are really, really essential in this subgenre of horror and just in horror in general. But I think, Friday the 13th really does stand on its own, and it is like so crucial, I think, to the way we understand and think about and continue to make slashers.
And the other films that we've compared it to throughout this discussion, namely Jaws and The Strangers, we hold those in more reverence than we do this film. Those feel more highbrow and influential, but they're not.
Right.
They're not at all. And I think all of these films, they succeed in the same way. They engage, they weaponize the viewer's imagination. There's so much power of suggestion here.
And they're not just like silly slashers as in like just there to like watch different ways people can be killed. There's real heart and emotion and like thematic stuff going on in both Halloween and Friday the 13th. I mean, Halloween is about like the sort of disruption of the suburban life and growing up and coming of age and like taking control of your own agency, especially as a woman, but as a person in general, and friendship and that kind of thing. And then this is about, I mean, a grieving mother whose her son died, and she's like, and that has ruined her and destroyed her and made her into a monster. And that's really interesting. Like there's real serious stuff happening in these. They're not just, oh, hee hee ha ha, let's watch people get killed. I mean, there is some of that because it's fun.
It's also just a hell of a good time.
But that's just the joy of horror, is that these things can coexist. They can be very serious and real and about really real, intense things that are, true to life and being a human being. But they're also so much fun, and they're goofy, and they're over the top. Like all of those things exist at the same time, and that's why this is, I think, the greatest genre ever. Horror.
Oh, totally.
Like nothing beats horror. It's just so special.
And when you have the benefit of decades and decades of great work within this genre, it becomes kind of an embarrassment of riches. And I'm glad we took a minute to acknowledge and kind of pay reverence to this film.
Me
because
too.
We definitely take the first Friday the 13th for granted.
100%. Yeah. I'm so glad we got to rewatch it, and I'm so glad that we got to talk about it because it is so much fun. Well, thank you all very much for listening. As Cam said earlier, we do have a Patreon. I won't repeat it, but we've got a Patreon. But another way you can support the show is by checking out Cam's latest book, Lemon Tarts in Space. It's a light sci-fi dark comedy. There are elements of slasher and horror in there for sure, but also some really serious themes too. It's a delightful time.
A lot of creative kills.
Yes, for sure. It's basically Alien meets Monty Python. So it's a delightful, spooky, fun, crazy time. You can check out the book as a regular book, purchase it as a ebook or a paperback, or you can also check out the fully produced audio drama, which is a real treat. The links to that are in the description of this episode. Thank you so much for joining us for this installment of Summerween. We'll be back next week with more horror and more scares and more fun. And check out all the other ones we put out this week or this summer so far, as well as all the other horror we've talked about in the past. You can just search through the archives. We've talked about a lot of things on here. So
Lemon Tarts is like a slasher if instead of Jason or Freddy or Michael Myers, you had Flubber.
Okay,
that's the best sales pitch I can do.
Okay, that's how we're going to start pitching it now. I've been saying Alien meets Monty Python for weeks and months now, but maybe we should say that
it's
instead.
Flubber meets Friday the 13th.
Oh my God, we got to start saying that. Okay, we'll do that for Summerween going forward. Okay, thank you all very much for listening. We'll catch you here in just a few days with another brand new episode.